Now the issue of fair share. Allow me a moment to talk to that issue, to speak to that issue. Because I hear everybody and their cousin is now using language that perhaps I'm responsible because I popularized that language of fair share. And many have had various things to say. But I think that everything that we do in life and say in life requires context. There was a time when 3 political parties, People's Action Movement, the Concerned Citizens Movement, and the People's Labour Party, entered into something called Team Unity. And Team Unity was entered into on the basis of certain mutual promises and commitments that were made and that were reduced into writing. There was a document called the Charlestown Accord that was signed by Timothy Harris, the leader of PLP, Vance Amory, the then leader of CCM, and Sean Richards, the then leader of PAM. I was not a signatory to that agreement, but that agreement was signed, and I'm pleased to say, and I hope history will record, that I actually drafted the agreement. So the agreement was signed. What did that agreement provide? It provided various things, but in part, the agreement provided for a fair share for Nevis from the proceeds of the Citizenship by Investment program. It spelled it out in terms that the people of Nevis would get a share of the Citizenship by Investment proceeds based on population. That's what the agreement said. And that agreement, let me reiterate, was between PLP, PAM, and CCM. On the basis of that agreement, we went into a coalition as an election, and on the basis of that agreement, Timothy Harris of the PLP, who won a single seat in 2015, that is, the PLP won 1 seat, he was given the role of Prime Minister. He was given, as we would say in local parlance, the big chair. And he was given the big chair. Why? Because that is what we agreed. PAM and CCM honored that agreement and elevated Timothy Harris to the role of Prime Minister. All of us here in this room are sensible people, and everybody listening have sense. You can't become no Prime Minister with 1 seat unless other people make you Prime Minister. Timothy Harris didn't lead a party that won any election at the poll. PAM won 4 seats in St. Kitts. CCM won 2 seats in Nevis. PLP won 1 seat. That gave us a total of 7 seats to form a government. And those 7 seats, 4 plus 2 plus 1, formed the Team Unity administration in 2015. Dr. Harris became Prime Minister because that was what was agreed. And we honored that agreement. No. And we have heard him say, what Charleston Accord them talk about, that ain't no agreement. What them talk about? Because what was used to assist Dr. Harris in becoming Prime Minister, he then turned his back on it. I think you all would be familiar, members of the press, with the great Shakespeare play, Julius Caesar. And when they tried to convince Brutus, who was an honorable man, to join the conspiracy against Caesar, one of the things that was said to Brutus is that lowliness is young ambition's ladder, whereto the climber upward turns his face. But when he once attains that upmost round, he then unto the ladder turns his back, scorning the base degrees by which he did ascend. That is the story of too many of us. When we cross over a bridge, people help us to get to where we want to get to, and then we scorn the base degrees by which we did ascend. We kick down the ladder that we use to get to the heights that we achieve. We say, the Charleston Accord doesn't matter, when we would have used it to become Prime Minister. Now, I want that background to be clear, because there can be no discussion about fair share in the political context without an understanding that fair share was agreed to. Just as the Prime Minister was agreed to, fair share was agreed to. And what started to happen, ladies and gentlemen, is that when we got into government, my leader at the time was the Honorable Van Semering. And we started to get $2 million a month from CBI. At every point that we got something, you know what we were told? It was interim. We were told, hold that for now, while we work out what the share going to look like. So we got 2 million. And yes, 2 million was a lot because before we never got anything. As we know, when Nevis got money, it came by way of loan. But we got 2 million a month. Hold that for now. None of us in here doesn't understand that. A man owe you money and he tell a man, hold $10, I'm going to come back with the rest. So hold that for now. After a while, we agitated, and the 2 million was increased, I think, to 3 million. And again, this is interim. Hold that. But time is going. And then that 3 million became 4 interim. Hold that for now until we work things out. But guess what? By now, first 5 years of Team Unity is now over. We are about to go into Team Unity 2. And absolutely, the money that we were getting was more, because if you get $1, it's more than 0. So we were getting more than we'd ever got from CBI into Nevis. Absolutely. You can point to the water taxi facility, the Mondo track, the new Treasury building in Charlestown. All of those were funded from funds that we received. Water, electricity upgrades, bought new generators. We spent money in Nevis on what I would call our sustainable development. That is why we don't have some of the problems in Nevis that there are elsewhere. We were doing the right things with our money. But the time kept going. And before you know it, it was 20. Well, COVID intervened. So let me not suggest that it was easy all along. But even during COVID, CBI continued to earn hundreds of millions of dollars. Nevis continued to get 3 million and then 4 million a month. So, at $4 million a month, you got $48 million for the year. Even if, as in some years, CBI brought in $600 or $700 million, Nevis only got the 48. And we kept being told, hold on to that. It's an interim measure. 5 years gone. We were distracted for 2 of those years by COVID. But then the election of 2020 came. The PLP now won 2 seats in St. Kitts. Tom held on to 4 seats, and the CCM, for the first time in its history, won all the seats in Nevis. So where we had before 7 seats, we now had 9 seats in the National Parliament. And I was now the leader of CCM. By 2020, I was the leader. And I, therefore, was the one who took the party into that election. And I said, no, you see this thing here, the Charleston Accord, this is the basis on which we are in this thing, you know. I didn't enter into Team Unity because I had some liking for somebody. My love was for Nevis. I wanted to see what Nevis could benefit and to ensure that the people of Nevis, for the first time, were able to access the full fruits of their citizenship. That was my purpose. And so while others used it for their own purposes, that was the purpose. So after it became apparent, I went, and I'll tell you, because many people, the government imploded for that and other reasons. Because my view was that the Charleston Accord was the basis of Team Unity. And if you're now going to use it to get to the Prime Ministership, but then tell me that it's not worth the paper it's written on, it means, therefore, that there's a little thing that I value, which is called integrity, that you have none. And so Team Unity collapsed under its own weight. People say I brought down Team Unity. CCM didn't have the capacity to bring down Team Unity, because Team Unity had 9 seats. You only need 6 to form a government. PLP had 2, and PAM had 4. So CCM could have left Team Unity and Team Unity would still have survived. The truth is, as Sean Richards has made clear, that he is the one who made that call, because truth be told, only Pam could have brought Team Unity down. And he made that call, and when he spoke to me, I said, I agreed with you, because we had moved away from all of the principles. Well, let us not say we. The Prime Minister of the day had moved away from all of the principles that had underpinned Team Unity. So, I say all that to say that Prime Minister Drew and the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party never signed any agreement with me about fair share. I have never been in any alliance with Labour. Labour didn't have any Charleston Accord or Basti Accord with the CCM and with Nevis. And so people now say, oh, how come you're not making noise with Drew about fair share? I said, because Drew never signed an agreement with me and said that in exchange for or in furtherance of the political support, I will ensure that Nevis gets its fair share. Now, I'm not suggesting that that absolves the person in the position of Prime Minister from ensuring that the island of Nevis gets what's due to it. But I think that that point that I'm trying to make has often been missed or ignored. And people say, Mark Brantley was making plenty noise about fair share and he's not making as much noise now. I was making plenty noise because that is what I signed up for. That was the written agreement. And any of you who don't accept it, go and see the Charleston Accord. Timothy Harris became Prime Minister because CCM lent its support. And CCM lent its support because we signed an agreement which said that this is what Nevis would get. And so obviously when that was not happening, I had to make noise because it was reneging on what was promised and committed to. I can't go and tell Prime Minister Drew, you have reneged on your commitment in relation to fair share, because I don't know that Prime Minister Drew has ever made any commitment. Prime Minister Drew has said he wants to ensure that the entire country benefits from what is on offer. But I think that the context and the politics is important. So what I have decided to do, and what I have been doing with the Prime Minister Drew, is seeking to develop a relationship between St. Kitts and Nevis, between Premier and Prime Minister, and to say there are certain things that need to happen, and that the people of Nevis need to benefit, yes, from CBI, yes, from geothermal exploration, yes, from ensuring that Nevis gets the taxes that are generated by economic activity in Nevis. And I have pressed on those people who listen to budget debates, for example, ought to have heard, if they're paying attention, that those points were raised and articulated by me. So, the issue of fair share, where we know the Prime Minister of the day has said that he has asked for assistance from the international community. He has said he has done that because, unlike Team Unity and the Charleston Accord, where we only looked at CBI, he's saying he wants to look at CBI and other taxes and non-tax revenue. So he wants a more comprehensive analysis. The last time I met with him, which was about 3 weeks ago, he indicated to me that the report had been obtained, and I think he has since said so publicly, and that he was asking his Ministry of Finance and his technocrats to do an analysis on that report. I have not seen the report as yet. I have said to him that I need a copy of the report so that my team in Nevis can also do their analysis to determine what it is that this World Bank report says. But as I stand here today, I have not yet seen a copy of the report that the Prime Minister, that is Prime Minister Drew, says is available. So, it is not that I have abandoned at all the quest for Nevis to get a fair share of whatever is available. And not just money, but opportunity. You see how we just here say that Mr. Diora Pemberton from Nevis is the one in Rome, representing the Federation. That's what we ought to become. It doesn't matter that he's from Nevis or he works for the NIA. If he's the best person to go off to Rome to represent the country, then let him go. That is also part and parcel of the fair share. Since Prime Minister Drew has been there, I have said so publicly, that Prime Minister Drew has offered to Nevis 25% of funds that he has received from certain friendly governments to assist in development. Those funds total $7.5 million US. Nevis has, over the past years, under Prime Minister Drew, been collecting 25% of that. Almost $2 million US. It is what we used to develop Pinnis. It is what we use to develop our for Culture the cultural complex and the cultural village. And we had a little bit left over that we put into the Bath Stream. What I found was interesting is that Prime Minister Drew, who I don't have no agreement signed with, called me when he got into government and he said, Premier, you know he talk, Premier, you know anything about this money? I said, no, Prime Minister, I never hear nothing about it. He said, how you mean? I said, this money has been coming into the office of the Prime Minister for the last how many years? You don't know anything about it? I said, no, I never heard about that yet. He said, well, from now on, Nevis will get 25%. That's a Prime Minister who I don't have no agreement with. That's a Prime Minister who I'm not in cabinet with. The one that I had an agreement with and the one that I was in cabinet with was collecting that money every single year, and the people of Nevis knew nothing about it. What he used the money for, I don't know. So when people start this comparison and say, oh, this and that, I say, listen, if Nevis got $100 billion under Team Unity, we deserve that and more because we are the ones who put Team Unity in government. Without the 2 seats in 2015, there could be no Team Unity government. And that was the agreement. We had it in black and white. This is what we would do. We honored our part and elevated a man with 1 seat. I remember our regional leader said to me, saw me at a conference, and he said to me, boy, y'all really give a man with 1 seat the big chair? And I said that was what we agreed. But you see, in politics, there's some people who have principle, and there are others who have none. And the principle is what led us to ensure that Dr. Timothy Harris became the 3rd Prime Minister of this country with 1 seat. And you realize, since Team Unity mashup, he's gone back to 1 seat. And I suspect that he's going to stay at 1 seat. Because there is no strength. There's no strength. CCM went into Team Unity with 3 seats in 2020. 2 in 2015, we increased it to 3 in 2020. 2022, after Team Unity collapsed, CCM came out with the same 3 seats that we had before the collapse. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? It tells you that for the people of Nevis, the Concerned Citizens Movement was still the only choice. People's Action Movement had 4 seats. They ended up with 1. PLP had 2 seats. They ended up with 1. So everybody lost ground except CCM. So it really speaks to the strength of the parties that were in Team Unity. The difficulty that we had with the PLP is they started to believe their own nonsense. And you took 1 seat, you elevated that 1 seat, and that 1 seat started to believe that he got there on his own. So no tell him nothing about no Charles. So Charleston a card I talk about. Me no I hear nothing about that. The ladder that he used. He now scorned the base degrees by which he did ascend. And so that's why he over somewhere in Taba pasture, he gonna stay over there. Right? That is the reality of what has happened. So